Emma beamed proudly, thinking she had caught someone snooping through the trash. Little did she know, this mistake would set off a chain of events leading to her downfall. I'm Sally, 32 years old, and I work in a costume department for a film and TV studio. Our work covers everything from elaborate historical outfits to modern-day attire for shows. My job involves tailoring costumes for actors and fixing any damage that occurs during filming. I spend my days sewing and ironing, skills I inherited from my mom. Despite the irregular hours and heavy workload, this job feels like it was meant for me, and I can't imagine doing anything else. I met Joe, my husband, at the studio. He worked with the actors, and seeing each other daily led to us growing close. 2 years later, we tied the knot, despite our busy lives. But shortly after, my mother fell ill and passed away unexpectedly. This left us no choice but to put our wedding and honeymoon plans on hold. We had originally planned a small, simple wedding at a local church, but now we had to save up for something more substantial. With our unpredictable schedules, we decided not to rent a place and instead moved into Joe's family home with his mother, Emma. Joe and I both lost our fathers early in life, so we understood each other's grief. Since I had no other family left, and Joe was concerned about his mother being alone, living together seemed like a reasonable solution. I hoped I could bond with Emma, but it quickly became a nightmare. She resented me from the moment we moved in. To her, I was just someone who had taken her son away. Emma's harassment began immediately. Her criticisms were unrelenting. Every speck of dust, every imperfection was a reason for her to berate me, making me feel like I had been raised poorly. I tried my best, cleaning until my hands bled, but her expectations were impossible. No matter how much effort I put in, it was never enough. I spent hours scrubbing, washing, cooking, and doing chores, only for her to criticize me again. The more tired I became, the worse things got. There was one time I stayed up all night scrubbing the sink, only to be met with more complaints. She insisted on controlling every aspect of the household, and when I tried to balance work and chores, she only piled on more demands. Did you finish the laundry? The curtains are torn upstairs. Fix them. You know how to sew, right? Emma would say. I'm sorry, I'm swamped with work. Can't it wait until the weekend? I would plead. What do you mean wait? It can't stay like that. What will the neighbors think? Fix it now, she would snap, showing no regard for my workload. I was exhausted, constantly juggling my job and the endless list of chores Emma set for me. Each day felt like I was living in a Cinderella story, slaving away with no relief. Emma seemed to take pleasure in seeing me worn down, especially when Joe wasn't home. It felt like a cruel power dynamic. I did all the housework, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to Joe about it because of my pride. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion that wore me down, it was the mental strain of being belittled every day. Things only got worse when Emma invited neighbors over for lunch. In front of them, she was even harsher, and I could hear them gossiping about me. Honestly, she's such a terrible daughter-in-law. I have to correct her all the time. My son can't see it, but I'm not fooled. She's so clueless and unlikable, one of the neighbors would say. I would overhear them laughing, and it felt like they were agreeing with Emma. The verbal abuse lingered long after the chores were done. Each day, I felt myself nearing a breaking point. I feared that if things continued like this, I might lose my sanity. But it wasn't just Emma. Joe's older sister, Sarah, was 38 and lived nearby with her boyfriend. She was very frugal and often came over for lunch to save money. The problem was, she never gave me a heads up, so I never had enough food prepared for her. She would show up, eat, and leave without warning. On top of that, she had a habit of treating everything in the house as hers, whether it was from her parents' house or ours. One day, I finally spoke up. Sarah, could you please let me know before you take something? I asked. The next day, Emma confronted me. Did you tell Sarah she can't come over anymore? Emma asked. What? No, I didn't say that, I replied, defending myself. So you're calling Sarah a liar? She demanded, catching me in a corner. Dealing with Sarah's manipulations and Emma's cruelty was overwhelming. It was hard enough managing one of them, but having to face both was like carrying an unbearable weight. One day, as I walked past the room where Sarah and Emma were talking, I overheard their conversation. She's like a free maid, Sarah said with a laugh. I'm jealous. You should send her over to my house too. Ma, am I not a daughter-in-law? I couldn't hold it in anymore. I had been silently bearing the weight of this for so long, but hearing it out loud was too much. That night, I finally broke down and spoke to Joe. I can't take it anymore. I've tried to be patient, but living with Emma is unbearable. Please, we need to move out, I said, tears streaming down my face. After a brief pause, Joe responded, okay, we've saved enough money. Let's start looking for a new place soon. Really? I'll start looking right away, I exclaimed, feeling a huge sense of relief. What we didn't know was that Emma had been standing just outside our room, eavesdropping on our conversation. That moment would set off a strange chain of events, but from that day on, the oppressive weight in the house began to lift. My dream was always to wear a wedding dress that I had made with my own hands. Sewing was my craft, after all. With renewed determination, I immediately ordered fabric and decided to focus on creating the perfect dress for my wedding. That was my new purpose. I started working on the dress in secret, away from Emma and Sarah. But one day, Sarah, who often showed up uninvited, caught me. Wow, this dress is amazing. It's incredible to have your own handmade dress, she said. Hey Sally, I'm getting married in 2 months. Could you make mine too? Renting a dress is just a waste of money. I want to keep costs low, so please, she insisted. I hesitated, but since she offered to pay for the materials, I agreed. I started working on Sarah's dress first, as our wedding was still far off. Sarah even asked me to keep it a secret from Emma, hinting that she planned to tell her she was renting the dress to get financial help. Whatever, I thought. At least she's paying for the materials. It almost seemed like Sarah's penny pinching was impressive. I talked to Joe about it, and he said, Sarah never changes once she's set on something. I'm sorry, but it would really help if you could do this for her. With his support, I agreed, feeling positive and motivated. After all, I was getting paid, and it would give me practice for making my own dress. I also hoped it might help improve my relationship with Sarah. So, I continued to focus on the dresses while balancing housework and my main job. Emma occasionally peeked into my room, suspicious of what I was doing. As Sarah's wedding grew closer, the dress was nearly finished. Then one day, Emma entered my room with a smile on her face. You're working hard again today, aren't you tired? She asked sweetly, her sudden shift in tone throwing me off. I'm going to make some coffee, she said casually. Really? That sounds wonderful, thank you, I responded, as Emma left, humming a tune. I felt an odd sense of discomfort. Emma making coffee for me? That was strange. Could there be something more to this? Doubts crept into my mind, but I pushed them aside. I focused back on my work, putting the finishing touches on the lace. The end was near, and despite it being Sarah's dress, I couldn't help but pour my heart into it. Then, the scent of coffee hit me. A knock on the door followed. Sally, can I come in? Emma asked. Oh, sure, I answered. In the next moment, I was stunned. Emma stepped inside, carrying a tray stacked with cups and saucers, each brimming with coffee. Emma, wait, there's no need for this, I exclaimed. The tray seemed more suited for a party than a simple coffee break. It was so heavy that Emma's arms were shaking as I instinctively moved to prevent her from coming further in. Oops, she feigned a stumble. The sound of breaking cups and coffee spilling everywhere filled the room. For a moment, everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. I looked down to see my yellow dress splattered with what appeared to be a giraffe-like stain. Ah, I gasped, too shocked to do anything else. I almost missed the brief smirk that crossed Emma's face. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Did you get burned? Wait, is that a dress? I thought you were digging through the trash, she chattered, her voice dripping with false concern. I stood frozen, speechless from the shock of it all. Then Emma, playing the role of the worried person, added, oh dear, you can't have your wedding like this, can you? That's when I knew for sure Emma was trying to sabotage our wedding. Her goal was to ruin our plans of leaving after the wedding, but I couldn't let anger take over now. I rushed to the bathroom, desperately trying to rinse the coffee out of the dress. If I didn't act fast, the stain would set. Emma watched with a smirk, offering help, which I coldly declined. I was overwhelmed with a mix of anger and panic. Then, Someone appeared behind Emma, Sarah. "What's going on here? Are you picking on Sally again?" Sarah asked, noticing the tension. "No, I just spilled coffee on her dress by accident," Emma replied, clearly enjoying the chaos. But then everything changed. "What? That's my dress," Sarah said, her voice filled with confusion. Emma was caught off guard, speechless. "Yours, Sarah? What do you mean? I can't believe this. I had her make my dress. What am I going to do? My wedding is in 2 weeks." Emma began to panic. While I listened to the absurd conversation, I continued trying to save the dress I'd spent months working on for my sister-in-law. As I scrubbed the dress, something hit me. I hadn't told anyone that it was actually Sarah's dress. Emma must have assumed it was for me. She wouldn't have deliberately ruined it otherwise. If she had known it was for Sarah, she wouldn't have bothered. Joe and I had planned to leave this toxic family home after the wedding. To Emma, I was always the outsider who took her precious son away. She couldn't bear the thought of me taking him with me, so she tried to ruin our wedding, thinking it would keep him around. Her petty jealousy led her to these foolish actions. Sarah was furious, laying into Emma. "How could you do this? You've ruined everything. I can't believe my own mother would destroy my wedding," she shouted. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. Please forgive me. You don't think I did it on purpose, do you?" Emma stammered, her true feelings finally slipping out. I ignored her, focusing on the dress. Just then, a familiar voice interrupted. "So, you thought it was Sally's dress and ruined it on purpose?" Everyone turned to see Joe standing there. "Oh, Joe, when did you get here?" I asked, surprised by his sudden appearance. Joe stood in the doorway, looking both disappointed and incredulous. I hadn't even noticed him walk in, so absorbed I was in the argument unfolding before me. Joe spoke slowly, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You saw Sally putting all this effort into that dress every night, and you deliberately ruined it? That's just despicable," he said. Emma and Sarah were taken aback, but Emma seemed particularly stunned. She probably never imagined Joe would scold her like this. Joe continued, his tone calm but filled with sadness. "I'm disappointed, Mom. Sally has put up with your attitude for so long, hoping you'd change. She did it for me, because you're my mom." Tears welled up in my eyes. I had always thought Joe was passive, but in that moment, I saw him as the man he truly was, someone willing to stand up for me, the woman he loved. His firm stance in the face of his mother's behavior made me fall for him even more. He turned to Emma, his expression firm. "And now it's come to this. I can't ignore this. I'm sorry, but Sally and I are leaving this place as soon as we can. I'll stay until the wedding, but I can't stay here anymore. It's just a dress now, but who knows what'll happen next. It could be Sally in danger next time. By then, it'll be too late." "Danger? I would never hurt her," Emma shouted in protest. "How can you say that after destroying her hard work so casually?" Joe's anger was palpable, but he didn't shout. He spoke with quiet fury, his face a mixture of rage and deep sadness. He was confronting everything he thought he knew about his mother, who had always been his biggest supporter. Emma, usually so quick with her words, was now speechless, tears welling up in her eyes. Even Sarah was taken aback, glancing back and forth between Joe and Emma. Later, Sarah decided to call off her wedding. Despite it being so close, she wouldn't get any of her money back. "It's not my fault. Emma paid for everything," Sarah insisted. At least Sarah wouldn't lose money. But Emma finally seemed to realize the gravity of her actions. The shock of being reprimanded by her son had left her weakened. But the fallout didn't stay confined to our home. Sarah's sudden cancellation led to a breakup with her boyfriend and his family. She blamed Emma for it all. After Joe and I left the family home, Emma would occasionally contact us, asking for money. She hadn't wanted us to leave because she was financially dependent on us. While we lived together, we contributed to the household expenses, but Emma had no income other than her pension. It seemed she had been relying on our support. Every time she called for money, Joe refused. "Mom, why don't you get a job? There are plenty of opportunities. We need to be independent. Please, just leave us alone," Joe pleaded. Despite her desperation, Joe remained resolute. His sense of responsibility for me only strengthened his resolve. Eventually, Emma found work as a janitor, which suited her perfectionist attitude toward cleaning. It was, in a way, ironic. Meanwhile, Sarah, after her breakup, moved back in with Emma and stopped working altogether, relying on Emma's small pension. The last time I saw her, she had gained an alarming amount of weight. Joe and I have since moved into our own apartment, where we're finally enjoying a life free from the constant judgment and sarcasm. We're much happier now, away from the toxic environment of that family home. We've set a date for our wedding, a small, intimate ceremony with just close friends. We decided not to invite Emma and Sarah, knowing their presence would cause nothing but trouble. But this is the way it had to be. They brought it upon themselves. I'm currently working on a new dress for the wedding. It's going to be more beautiful than the one that ended up covered in coffee stains. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Stay amazed.